On today's show, we know the players for the Cleveland Cavaliers that are the most important ones this season, but how would we rank them and how tight exactly are those margins? We'll dissect all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast,
part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I just want to say, as we get started here, thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get started here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is, again, code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. We are officially in the month of September. That might not mean much, but it does mean that training camp begins this month. Media Day will be at the end of the month, and then training camp will begin very shortly thereafter. So basketball is not quite here. We are roughly 5.5, 6 weeks away from the first regular season game that the Cavs will play against the New York Knicks in the middle of October. But we are inching closer. We are going to have real basketball things to talk about before you know it. And it is time to start pushing ahead and looking forward to what this season will bring and start diving into things a little bit deeper. We will start doing player breakdowns soon on the show. We'll start really looking ahead to what this Cavaliers team is going to look like when they hit the floor sooner than later. And one of the conversations that I wanted to have is, who are the most important members of this team? And that is a question where you're listening or watching to this and you can say, well, I can tell you that. It's Donovan Mitchell, it's Evan Mobley, it's Darius Garland. And then the discussion really begins after that. And you would be right. Those are certainly the top three guys on the Cavs in terms of importance. But I do think it's a very interesting conversation to have. One, which order guys are ranked in and how far we go down where guys really are important to this Cavs team achieving what is their ultimate goal of winning a championship come June. So I think that it is actually a conversation at the top, because right now there's no question in my mind that Donovan Mitchell is the best player on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Our NBA top 100 from Locked On, I believe, is coming out this week. And I got a little sneak peek of it, and I can't necessarily discuss where guys are ranked, but Donovan Mitchell is the highest ranked member of the Cavs, which I think should come as a surprise to absolutely nobody. He was first team All-NBA this past year for the very first time in his career. I believe he finished 5th in the MVP race. Like, he has been, at worst, a top 10 player in basketball since the Cavs acquired him. Evan Mobley has not quite reached that stature yet. Now, whether or not he does before the end of this season, really before the end of the postseason that'll happen this upcoming spring, that is the question that's worth tackling. Because so far, what Donovan has done, both as a member of the Utah Jazz before he was in Cleveland and as a member of the Cavs over the past 3 seasons, has been be a great basketball player. Like, there's not much need for discussion there. He's been fantastic. And of course, Evan Mobley not been in the league as long, has not developed to the same place, and is just in a much different spot in his career than what Donovan Mitchell is, where Donovan is right in the prime of his career. And I don't think Evan Mobley is even close to what he's going to be. But I do think that kind of speaks to how good Evan Mobley has actually already been, because he, as we've talked about a bunch, has already made second team All-NBA, was defensive player of the year for this team. He is somebody that is still on a pretty significant upward trajectory, to where I think that if you're ranking the best players on the Cavs right now, Donovan Mitchell, like I said, is no doubt about it number one. But I think the real discussion is, will Evan Mobley be the best player on the Cavs when the postseason arrives? Will Evan Mobley be the best player on the Cavs 12 months from now? At some point, I do think Evan will overtake Donovan as the best player on the Cavs, because I just think that the career arc for Evan is, his ceiling is too high for him not to surpass Donovan. And I do want to be clear as I say this. I don't think that this means Donovan is not getting better or getting worse, because I do believe that this could be his best season. I think that this season could be the peak of Donovan Mitchell as an NBA player. After this year, he gets into his 30s, and guards of his size in their 30s don't necessarily always, they're not necessarily always to keep up their production level. And I think that's a fair thing to worry about with Donovan. That's not current, but that in a couple of years, that's a discussion worth having. And obviously Evan is still in his early 20s and getting much, much better. So at a certain point, he will surpass Donovan. We just don't know when that's going to be. I do think it could be this year, though. I think that with the steps forward Evan Mobley took last year, where he was, I thought, a better defender. And he's been a great defender since day one in the NBA, which is a very rare thing, and very difficult, especially for a big man, to be a very good defender early on in their career. But Evan did that. And I thought last year was his best defensive season. And that doesn't mean that I don't think like he took some giant step forward defensively last year. I think his floor is so high on that end. But last year, the steps forward that he took offensively, I expect similar going into this season. I expect what Evan did last year offensively, the growth, not necessarily what his counting stats looked like last year, or even what his counting stats looked like from 2 years ago to last year, how much they changed. But I look at how different his mindset was. I look at how much more aggressive he was. I look at the way that he was able to shoot the ball last year, and the step forward that he took from the 2023-2024 season and the 2024-2025 season. I expect, even if the counting numbers aren't going to be crazy because this Cavs team is pretty balanced and has so much talent on it, I expect him to take a step forward offensively that looks pretty similar to what he did last season, where he's going to be that much better. And if he is that, we are having, like I said, I don't think Donovan Mitchell I don't think him being in the top 10 players in the world, I don't think it's a conversation. Like, he just is. I think that we could be having the conversation about Evan being a top 10 player in the world 8 months from now. By the time the playoffs arrive, by the end of April, are we talking about Evan Mobley as a top 10 player in basketball potentially? I think it's realistic. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I think if you look at the range of outcomes, that is one of the more positive ones. Like, he would have to take maybe even a little bit bigger step than he did last year this summer into this season. But I don't think it's crazy to think that it's a possibility that by the time the playoffs arrive, Evan Mobley's a top 10 player in basketball. And if we're having that conversation, that means we are having the conversation. Okay, well, how close to Donovan Mitchell is he? How tight is that race between 1 and 2 for the best and most important players on the Cavs? Because I do think you can make the case that for the Cavs to get to where they want to go this upcoming season, if Evan gets to that top 10 threshold, which he's not there right now, and I don't necessarily think there's an argument for him to be there right now. I think there will be an argument in the future. I don't think we're there now. But with that, if he does that, the Cavs might not ever get to the point where they are the favorites to win the finals because of how good Oklahoma City is. And of course, so many things have to go your way. But I do wonder is that the thing that needs to happen for the Cavs to be a team that we look at and say, yes, that is a team that can and should win the NBA Finals this year. You certainly, in my opinion, feel much better about them if we are having the conversation in, let's just say, the middle of May, after the Cavs take care of whoever they play in the second round. If we're having the conversations like, man, you know what? Evan Mobley's actually been the better player for the Cavs, not just in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, but overall throughout the season. I think you feel really good about this Cavs team, not just getting to the finals. I think you feel really, really good about that, but their chances of winning the finals. Because as I have mentioned several times, not just on today's episode, but on a lot of episodes of Locked On Cavs, I anticipate Donovan Mitchell to be great this year. I do. I don't think he's going to take a step back. I think he's going to continue to be an all-star, all-NBA type guy. I think Evan Mobley is going to take a big step forward. And that's why right now, having Donovan as the number 1 member of the Cavaliers, I don't think is a controversial take. I think actually anything else would be a controversial take. But I do think that when we get to the end of April, the beginning of May, that's when it could become a controversy. And that would be, in my opinion, the best possible controversy that the Cavs could have. Because if Evan Mobley is that good, it's going to mean really, really great things for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, the guy at number 3, I think, is a very clear choice. We'll talk about Darius Garland, and then we'll get into some other debates next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Did you know that most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, other things you might have going on? It can be a lot to keep track of. And when you don't have that full, complete picture of what you've actually got going on financially, you can end up leaving some money on the table. And I can tell you, nobody wants to leave money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface. It's on your laptop or on your phone. Super, super convenient to have it on your phone. Monarch built for people with busy lives that I think I qualify there. I feel like I'm incredibly busy. Monarch is built for somebody like me. So if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you, where you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. If that sounds good to you and you don't want to let financial opportunities slip through the cracks, then you need to head on over to monarchmoney.com right now, because if you go there and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, you'll get half off your first year. That's right, 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks again. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts. Do me a favor, make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. I am planning on doing a giveaway early next week or later this week. So an episode I'm going to do probably next Monday is I'm going to buy NBA 2K and I am going to simulate the Cleveland Cavaliers season. I'm not going to play a game. I'm not going to sign anybody. I'm not going to make a trade. Whatever happens, happens. And the person who is going to come closest with win total, with where they finish in the East, with their final finish, and with probably one other thing that I will have to work out, but I will be giving away a copy of NBA 2K26. So stay tuned. Don't necessarily have the full picture of what it's going to look like right now. Later in this week, I certainly will. So as I mentioned, I think there's a very clear number 3 guy on the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that number 3 guy is Darius Garland. I don't think there's a discussion for him to be number 1 or number 2. I also don't think I think there's zero argument for anybody else to be number 3. Like, it is Darius Garland, it's Donovan and Evan, and then I think there's a gap, and then I think there's Darius, and then I think there's probably a bigger gap after Darius before we get to the next guy, and that's where I think that we can get into some debates. But the one thing that I do want to say about Garland, because we don't know whether or not he's going to begin the season on the floor for the Cavs. I know there have been some workout videos circulating. I would just take those with a grain of salt, not saying he will be back to start, not saying he won't be back to start the season. But I do think it is in the best interest of Darius Garland. I think it is in the best interest of the Cleveland Cavaliers to take a bit of a long view with this, because as I've mentioned several times on this show, what happens in April, May, and June is much more important for the Cavs than what happens in October, November, December, and January. And I would just keep that in mind as we think about when Darius Garland makes his season debut, when Max Strus gets back from his foot injury. I just think that is the thing that's worth keeping in mind. But I will say, with Garland, the Cavs, in my opinion, can win a title with Darius Garland as their starting point guard. I very firmly believe that. But the thing that they do need more than anything is they need Darius Garland to be healthy in the postseason. And I know that he has this reputation as maybe not a postseason player. And it's kind of, I think, hard to refute that right now. But I also think if you want to build the argument that he's not a postseason player, a lot of it hinges on injuries, right? Because I do think if you look at the series he had against the New York Knicks a couple of years ago, 3 years ago at this point, like, okay, is that who Darius Garland is now? Probably not. And then you look at 2 years ago where he fractured his jaw and he was just a shell of himself. And then this year he needed foot surgery after the postseason. I don't know that you can really string together a very good argument for him being a postseason player right now without saying, well, he's been injured. But I also don't think you can string together a very good argument against him in the postseason without actually, like, the injuries matter. And I just think that is the one thing that I will say about Darius is that if he is healthy, I look forward to seeing whether or not he can refute that in the postseason, because I think that is a very important thing. And then up next, between number 4 and number 5, because Darius Garland, as I mentioned, a very clear-cut number 3 on this roster. I think number 4 is DeAndre Hunter. And I personally am of the opinion that DeAndre Hunter will have a better season than Jarrett Allen. I think he is more important to winning than Jarrett Allen. I think Jarrett is a little bit redundant, partially because of what Evan Mobley can do, and DeAndre Hunter is the best player of his archetype on the Cavs. And I just think that matters a little bit more. I value that certainly more. So I've got him at number 4, and I have him at number 4 with high expectations going into this season, because I look at last year, and DeAndre Hunter, I thought, did a lot of really good things after the Cavs traded for him at the NBA trade deadline in February. And with that, he shot the ball incredibly well. I thought his defense was good, not great. Maybe that was the one area where I expected him to be better. And the passing is not necessarily something that is a huge part of his game. But I also look at it and think, okay, well, how difficult is it to be traded mid-season from playing on a team like the Atlanta Hawks, which plays a much different style of basketball than what the Cleveland Cavaliers have? They had a offensive system that was very heliocentric and very reliant on Trae Young, whereas the Cavs did not have an offensive system that was anything like that. So I do think that was a big adjustment for him, trying to uproot your life, move from Atlanta to Cleveland and get used to new surroundings, new coaches, new teammates, and also going from fighting for maybe the 8 seed to trying to win a title, I think is a really big jump. And I think that after having a full offseason in Cleveland, after having and it hasn't happened yet, but it is upcoming, having a full training camp, having a full preseason, really having a full season in Cleveland, I think that DeAndre Hunter is going to have a really, really big year for the Cavs. And I think all of those things are going to be things that are in his favor. And I think those things will be in the Cavs' favor. So I look at him and say, he is probably, for me, the 4th most important player. And he is the most important non-star that the Cavs have on their roster right now as it pertains to their title hopes, because he does play a position of great value and he is the best player the Cavs have at that spot. I think that because of that, what he can do is more important than Jarrett Allen. And this is not to say that Jarrett's not a very good player, because Jarrett is a very good player. Jarrett will provide a lot of things. I think he's going to be very consistent. Like Darius, I think that he needs to go out there and have a very strong postseason and beat the allegations that he is, in fact, a 16-game player. I am much more confident in Darius Garland being able to do that than I am Jarrett Allen being able to do that. But Jarrett has proven to be a very, very good 82-game player, as we saw last year, where he was the first player in NBA history to make 70% or more of his field goal attempts and 70% or more of his free throw attempts amongst qualified participants, which is certainly a very, very cool thing. So I do think that he's very important, but I look at this in the postseason and I say, okay, if the Cavs are closing with their best 5, the 4 guys that I've already named between Donovan, Evan, Darius, and DeAndre, those guys are on the floor in their best 5. I'm not sure that Jarrett Allen is. And I think that, to me, is one of the dividing lines when you start trying to have these discussions, which I do think are some difficult ones to make, right? Like, it's not that Jarrett Allen's a bad player. It's just, I look at the positional value that DeAndre Hunter brings. I think Jarrett Allen's skill set is a little bit redundant because of Evan Mobley. That's nothing against Jarrett. It's just, hey, Evan Mobley, better at those things. He's the better basketball player, and there's no discussion to be had as far as that goes. Jarrett Allen is still somebody that could go out there and have an all-star caliber season. But much like Darius Garland, he's going to be out there, and it's going to be, well, you know what? He needs to be better in the postseason when it counts. All right. So we went through the 5 best players on the Cavs. There are more basketball players on the Cavs. We will discuss the rest of the roster and how I have them ranked in terms of importance to winning a championship next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. And like I said earlier, you can find the show on YouTube. And if you're watching, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us here at Locked On Cavs. And at Locked On, we do have an important request for you because Locked On wants to hear from you. Right now, we've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners, make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. So right now, go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. And everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that is lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks again for helping us out. So as I mentioned, the 5 most important players for the Cavaliers this year are Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, DeAndre Hunter, Jared Allen. Number 6, I have Max Strus. And obviously, Max is not going to be ready to start the season. Max presumably will be ready in early 2026, I would imagine. The month of January is probably what I would circle for him to make his return to the floor. The Jones fracture that he suffered, not pleasant. It's not fun, as I mentioned last week, and you can go get a more thorough discussion about this last week. It's an injury that I had a couple of times in college, and it is not fun even a little bit. But Max is somebody that I do think is a postseason player. I think that he is very important. I think that the connector that he can serve as, both offensively and defensively, is something that is difficult to replace. I do think the Cavs will miss him, but I don't look at this and say, oh, the Cavs season is in serious danger because Max Strus is going to miss 35 games to start the season. I just don't think that's necessarily true either. And then kind of going off the board for number 7, but I think it's Lonzo Ball. And I look at what the Cavs did this summer, and I think Larry Nance Jr. is a very fine addition, but I look at how adding Lonzo Ball changes this team. And because he's a two-way player, because he can be effective both offensively and defensively, and, maybe his outside shot is not quite as good as Ty Jerome, and he doesn't necessarily get to the basket the way that you would like a 6'6" or 6'7" guard to get to the basket. I think that he's going to have a very profound impact offensively and defensively. And that is important because as you get down this list, I think it becomes very important, and look no further than what the Indiana Pacers were able to do last year. Look no further than the way the Oklahoma City Thunder are built right now. I think it is very, very important to have all of your role players be guys that can be positives, both on offense and defense. You're not asking these guys to be stars, but I do think that they can't be guys that can be played off the floor. And Lonzo Ball can't be played off the floor. Now, as I have said, every single time that Lonzo Ball gets mentioned, comes with the injury red flags, right? Like, he has played 70 games in the last 4 years. This is not some guy with a great bill of health, but I look at what he can do for the Cavs and how he can change things. And I kind of have him this high too, because I look at him and say, he's the guy that, especially if Darius Garland is out to miss a chunk of the regular season to begin, he's the guy that I think can really help elevate Evan Mobley. And I think that alone boosts him up the list a little bit. I would be surprised if he is 7th in terms of minutes, both per game and overall. But I think on both ends of the floor, because he is a plus defender, I think he's going to provide some lineup flexibility to Kenny Atkinson in this roster. I look at him and say, I think Lonzo Ball is going to be sneaky important to what the Cavs do this season. And if he can stay healthy, which again, unfortunately is a big if, but if Lonzo Ball can stay healthy, I think that he is somebody that's going to be able to do a lot of really good things for the Cavs. I think he's going to some extent, change their identity for the better. At number 8, I go Sam Merrill, because I do look at him and say he is somebody that has a skill set that is difficult to replace And that skill set is the movement shooting. And that is one of the things, too, that the Cavs will miss about Max. Because if you look at this roster, like Darius Garland can be a movement shooter. Donovan Mitchell can be a movement shooter, but they're not movement shooters the way that Sam Merrill is. Max Strus is a good movement shooter, but even he is not a movement shooter the way that Sam Merrill is. And I think that is a very difficult skill set to find. It's part of the reason why Sam's contract was as large as it was this summer, because it is a challenging thing and teams would like to have movement shooters. So I look at Sam and think that he is the 8th most important member of the Cavaliers going into this season. I do think that he is a good defender too. Like, he's not a great defender. No one's ever going to confuse him with a defensive player of the year candidate. He's never going to make an all defense team, but Sam is a good defender. And that is certainly something that if you are the Cavs, and Kenny Atkinson talks about this all the time when he talks about Sam Merrill, but if you are the Cavs, you like to have that at your disposal. Number 9, I went with Dean Wade. And Dean feels a little bit like the forgotten man for the Cavaliers. And I have kind of talked myself into betting on Dean having a really great year. And he is an expiring contract. He will be a free agent next summer, at least as of right now. I do believe he is currently extension eligible. But he's somebody that just is, I kind of think, become a bit of an afterthought. And part of it is, of course, like Lonzo Ball and like Larry Nance Jr., as I'll talk about him coming up in a second, the injury issue has been a real thing for him. Like, he's not been able to consistently stay healthy. He's been good when he's been on the floor, but I also think the other thing this year, the one thing that I think the Cavs need to be demanding out of Dean Wade is for him to shoot the basketball more. He's a very good shooter. He's not the movement shooter that Sam is, that I just got done talking about, but he's a very, very good shooter. The problem is he doesn't take enough shots. He does not take enough open shots. He can play too passive offensively. He's a terrific defender. I think he's one of the best defenders the Cavs have. But if he plays passive offensively, the Cavs become easier to defend when he's on the floor. And that is something that just absolutely cannot happen this year. That's kind of why I have him at 9. But I also think that this is an opportunity to buy some stock in Dean Wade. Like, if you're buying low on Dean Wade, I think now is kind of the time to do it. Number 10, I went Jalen Tyson. Obviously, we don't know a ton about Jalen because we didn't see him a lot as a rookie. Had a very good summer league. I do think that there will be a spot in the rotation for him, certainly to start the season with Max Strus out. And this could be an opportunity for him to prove, hey, I am somebody that is going to be a part of this team in the future. I am somebody that's going to be moving forward, part of the rotation. I can be a starter. I can be a 6th, 7th man on a championship team. That, I think, is what we're looking to learn about Jalen Tyson this season. Larry Nance Jr., I put him at number 10, having a legitimate number 11. Having a legitimate third big for the Cavs, I think, is kind of rarefied air. Like, they've not necessarily been there since Kevin Love was here. That year where he was, I think he finished 2nd in 6th man of the year, but you look at some of the other bigs that they've had, Robin Lopez was not really a legitimate third big. Tristan Thompson has not necessarily been a legitimate third big. I know he had a solid stretch the year where he also had a suspension, and I don't know how connected those two things were. But he hasn't necessarily been that for the last couple of years. Larry Nance Jr., if he can stay healthy, I think could be really good for this team because a lot like Lonzo Ball, he provides positional flexibility. The fact that they have a third big that can play the 4 or the 5, meaning they can play next to either Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley, is a really, really good thing because the Cavs have not had that in a while. And I think that is something that could open up the way that they're structured. At number 12, I go Craig Porter Jr. If Darius Garland is out, Craig becomes a little bit more important, certainly. I kind of think we are getting to now or never time with Craig. I've been somebody that from the day he made his debut, I thought, oh, this guy is going to have a 10-plus year career in the NBA. And he's just kind of been the same guy since then. I just don't know that he's gotten better. And that is something that I think it's kind of now or never for him. And then at number 13, Tyrese Proctor. Listen, the Cavs are going to be really, really good. They're going to win, in my opinion, somewhere. I haven't totally come around, but I'm going to think they win 58 plus games. It's pretty rare for a second round pick as a rookie to come in and make an impact. So while I think Tyrese Proctor will be a good player in the NBA, I think he is an NBA caliber player. I'm just not sure the impact that he's going to have on the Cavs this year. And there's absolutely 100% nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But thank you for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. Would like to do a mailbag a little bit later this week. So if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, comment any questions that you have about the Cleveland Cavaliers, about the NBA, or anything else on this video. If you want to find me on social media, you can tweet them at me. You can send them my way on Blue Sky, or you can email me at locavsmailbag@gmail.com. That is locavsmailbag@gmail.com. And we will be doing a mailbag episode a little bit later this week. Would probably like to do one of these per week between now and the time that training camp begins later on this month. As I mentioned on Thursday's show last week, back to being every weekday. Yes, took Labor Day off. I am recording this. It is 10:45 Monday night right now, but I will be Tuesday through Friday this week, and then Monday through Friday from here on out. Cavs, Locked On Cavs, the podcast is back Monday through Friday. So truly your team first thing every single day. Thanks for making this your first listen. Wherever you get your podcast, please make sure you're subscribed to Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And if you are watching on YouTube as we get out of here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.